one. Another Tuesday afternoon. We're in the month of September. Wow. Yes, yeah. And we're airborne as usual. The Executive Lounge with me and Shirado. This is your thought leadership show that brings you nuggets of insights and from the lives and work of men and women who have scaled the daunting heights of either running businesses here at home, growing institutions, doing so here in Ghana, at home, and around the world. So I'm going to start off the show slightly differently from the way I usually do. And I'm going to kick it off with a song by Robert Nesta Marley. And I know what you'd be thinking, why reggae today? Well, I will tell you in a moment. Just after we've played this song. But you're welcome to the Executive Lounge. This is your preferred thought leadership show on radio in the afternoons, on Tuesday afternoon, and we are airborne. My guest today is a man who is a professor of pharmacy or pharmacology, and he will be bringing us insights into a whole bunch of different things. But this is Bob Marley's Three Little Birds. And I hope that by the time we're done with our conversation, you will know that everything is going to be okay.
Super Hits Radio. Joy 99.7. 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 Super Hits Radio. Joy 99.7.
Everything is going to be all right. This is Three Little Birds by Robert Nesta Marley. Arguably, the best voice to have ever sang the genre of reggae music. But that's not why we're here this afternoon. This is the Executive Lounge. I'm Inshira Addo, and today I bring you a conversation with a man born Alexander Ni Otododu. You know him as Professor Alex Dodu, and we'll be talking about standards. Now, I'd like to ask you to imagine and picture a situation where, so for example, if you traveled all the way to Paga, one cedi would not be one cedi, and a dollar would not be a dollar, or 10 Ghana cedis would be different depending where you go, or a mile will be measured differently depending where you are. Imagine if your body weight was different depending on who you spoke to. Imagine if the electrical current that flowed through each home was different. Imagine what that would mean for people manufacturing products. Imagine people manufacturing equipment for use in hospitals and things like that. But also, imagine that every human being will have a different anatomy. So my eyes might be on my shoulders, and the question that I would like you to ask yourself is, what would we do without standards? What will the world be like if we didn't have standards? Let that sink in for a moment. So our conversation today is about standards, its impact on development. Why do we even need to have standards? And while there's a lot of talk about adverse impact of standards on society, how do we ensure that the standardization that we have promotes development in the true sense of development, that everyone gets a shot at getting the right things they pay for, the right services, and that products are of the quality they claim they are of? My guest is Professor Alex Dodu. He's a clinical pharmacologist and a professor at the Center for Tropical Clinical Pharmacology, University of Ghana Medical School. Former director of World Health Organization Collaborating Center for Advocacy and Training in Pharmacovigilance. Such a long word. Currently serves as Director General of the Ghana Standards Authority. And so you'll understand why the conversation today is about standards and its impact on development. Welcome to the Executive Lounge, and thank you so much for joining me, Professor Alex Dodu.
Thank you, Ishra.
How are you doing, sir?
Everything is going to be all right.
I had to play the song. Normally, I would play that at the end, but I'm grateful that you could join us. You've had your plate full today, and but it's great to have you. I've been quite concerned about standardization, and it's something that led to this conversation we're about to have. Why is it important?
I mean, Ishra, the whole world, I think it's in biblical times, it's been stated that 40 standards are an abomination to the Lord, purely because human beings by nature tend to do things anyhow. But I think in the world where we are all trying to speak the same language, standards then become the only language which is universal. An iPhone X in Ghana is the same iPhone X in China, in Papua New Guinea. When we say we are traveling 1 mile in Ghana, it should be the same 1 mile everywhere. And this just happens because human beings by nature, after the fall of man, our main occupation is to trade. And throughout history, regardless of the religion, trade has been marked, shall we say, by cheating and inconsistencies. And so by having standards, you ensure that people speak the same language. Importantly, for industrial efficiency, can you imagine a world where every vehicle has its own tie, so that when you buy your car, you need to go around the world looking for the size of ties? Some are round, some are flat. It wouldn't work. The same for light bulbs. You have different people producing bulbs and different people producing the socket. Why? Because it's been standardized. So when you say, well, it's 3 feet, everybody knows it's 3 feet, and someone can do one, the other person can do another. What we say is that standard has benefits for everyone. For consumers, it gives you reliability. It gives you assurance. For producers, it improves efficiency. For academia helps you in your teaching. Even for churches, those who belong to the Orthodox churches know that you go to 10 Anglican, Catholic, or Methodist churches, and increasingly even the newer churches, and the service procedure is the same. Human beings like reliability. Indeed, sometimes I tell people that standards can be likened to amamre, protocol, a way of doing things, which is accepted by the community in which you live. So that wherever you are, greeting is in a particular way. We all know that if you go to a cheese palace in Ghana, traditionally you go with a drink. That is our standard, that is our protocol, that's our requirement. But when it comes to healthcare and other things, without standards, we would all be dead. I mean, with standards, you know that 500 milligrams of paracetamol is 500 milligrams. Wherever it's manufactured, once our Food and Drugs Authority says it is 500, you go along with it, and it's made our lives easy. Standards have ensured that we can all travel in confidence. We fly planes without thinking twice, because you know that if it's a 747, it's a 747. So standards really, to put it very, very mildly, standards represents life. And without standards, everything we do is over.
Now, that's a very bold statement and deep one at that, that without standards, I mean, standards is life. I was just thinking, just engaging the listeners a moment ago and saying that if they can imagine that each individual had a different anatomy, that maybe my eyes would be on my shoulders. But even at creation, there's a certain standardization, because a chicken, chicken meat is chicken meat, right? A hen has 2 feet and has a certain physiology. So even at creation, there's standardization. So what has the evolution of standardization been for society, and how has that impacted on how we've evolved our various economic revolutions, if I could call it that?
Sure, I'm glad you actually mentioned this, because, for those of us who are very religious, you look at the Ark of the Covenant, you look at Noah's Ark.
That's right.
It was designed with specific requirements. But right from creation, there has been specifications. The one on the ground was in the sea was called the fish, etc., etc. But it took history and wars for humanity to realize that standards produce efficiency. And what happened? In the 17th and 18th centuries, when there were wars, the British were doing very well with the wars. And it turns out that all their artilleries had been standardized, so the bullets could be produced at different places. And they won against the Spaniards, and they realized that the Spaniards had different guns which required different bullets, so they were not efficient, in the sense that if your bullet finishes, you cannot share bullets. Then the start of the railways also became another key issue in the United States of America, that we are laying tracks. If we don't speak to the same language, what will happen is that the rails will fall down. So even though standards had been with us at creation, when a man had more than 2 eyes, it's an aberration. We won't call it abnormal, but it would look like an aberration. And it has passed on through history that when things don't conform to the normal, to the expected, to the specifications, society begins to get worried. Now, in Ghana as a country, we are just beginning to really start a real industrialization drive. And this morning, I have been at the AGI conference making it very, very clear that if Ghana is going to industrialize, it's going to be anchored on a very, very stable quality policy, which is anchored on standards. Put it this way, and let me say it's loud and clear. We can do all the prayers we want. However, if the fundamental base of quality, of consistency, of reproducibility are not there, then we've lost it. And I always say that Ghanaians always use prayers as an excuse not to do the right things. You cannot industrialize if you don't have measurement standards, because if your products go out of the country, they'll be lost. How many furniture producers here can export anywhere else? Today, I'm dressed like Obama. Why? I bought a beautiful Ghanaian shirt, ironed it, and I thought, let me show off my shirt to the AGI, only to realize that the buttons don't fit the buttonholes.
Oh.
I'm not joking. So I have shirts where the button will not go into the buttonholes, at least on the hand. So I folded them and I look like Obama and I'm looking stylish. But I had to improvise.
Yeah.
So I think the point to all of us, whether you are university teachers, Standards Authority, FDA, is that the truth is one, and standards ensure that consumers get reliable goods and services, reliable products, reliable treatment, and these things will inure to the benefit of the country. Anything else will be, unfortunately, not leading to where we want to go as Ghana Beyond Aid. Because, a Ghana Beyond Aid should be anchored on a very, very, very strict adherence to quality. If there is even 1% failure in quality, the whole thing crashes. And then today, I've had a chance to tell the AGI that it's an all or none phenomenon. You cannot have world-class hospitals in the country and have motorbikes driving against traffic. What will happen is that the motorbike will drive into the doctor's car. The doctor will get to work late, and the infrastructure is gone. So sometimes people fail to realize that when you are developing the quality system, every part must work. Your cleaner must be up to notch. Your utilities must be working. Your doctors must be working. Your street lights must be on. Your traffic lights must be on. I mean, it's all or none. And quite often in this country, it's like we begin to put things in boxes with the industry, and unfortunately we accept it, and that is my biggest worry. We accept mediocrity.
What do you think accounts for where we find ourselves? Because I'm just beginning to think back to some other jurisdictions that I have had exposure to, that you are assured of certain things. You can predict. So if you use the metro anywhere across Europe, you're assured that there's a certain gap between the platform and the train, and that there's a certain beep ahead of the train doors closing. So you kind of almost take things for granted as though you're taking a step forward if you can walk. I don't think we necessarily think when we take steps forward. Once our mind decides we need to go forward, we go. So how is it that we can accept or bemoan the dysfunction, yet can't have standards or adhere to standards to ensure that we have some structure and form?
Sure, you've asked me a difficult question, but I think I have to answer. I have to answer because I think one of my slides this afternoon at the AGI conference was what accounts for our inability as a country to achieve quality. And what I said, interestingly, because you were not there, so you couldn't have seen my slides, was that there is a gap. There is a gap between what we say and what we do. There's a gap between teaching, research on one side and practice on the other side. There's a gap between industry and academia. There's a gap between sometimes some policies we do and how those policies will be implemented. So for as long as there's a gap, there'll be problems. And what I have offered is that it's about time those of us who are public-facing government institutions bridge the gap. Because no longer should we find it acceptable that there are challenges in science and technology, and we who have been fed and looked after by taxpayers' money would begin to talk about it as if it's somebody else's problem. It is our problem. And I'm happy to say that the Standards Authority over the past 12 months have engaged the universities, saying that this so-called gap between what the students teach and what industry does should be bridged and should be bridged down. It's about time we confront these things, because we cannot afford to wait till tomorrow. In fact, the gap is too big. The gap, students come out and you ask them to write their name and you begin to say, wait a minute, what happened here? So really, there's a gap everywhere. And the only way to bridge that gap is to ensure that quality reigns supreme, or standards reign supreme. And just to add the last bit, because I said it today on my slide, so before I'm reported, let me report myself. I said a few things. I said standards or quality are not partisan. They are not political. They are not based on talk. They are not ambiguous. They are simple, they are direct, they are honest, they are easily evaluated. I'm saying these because if you were not Ghanaian and you sometimes sit outside and view the way we do business in certain areas, it's like the one who shouts best is the one who is credible. The truth has been beaten out of the country, except when it comes to church. Even at church, there's a problem. Right now, there's no church I know where the standard for counting money does not include 4 different groups. And then I think the Women's or Men's Fellowship will count it finally. So even if we cannot be consistent in church, then something is seriously wrong. And we need a complete change of mindset. I will not have a meeting start with prayers where everybody proceeds to lie. It just doesn't add up. And I think we've as a country, we have tolerated dishonesty too much, to the point that it's becoming a work of art. But I think when everybody, myself included, when we are held accountable for what we say and what we do, this country will move very far. As the Ghana Standards Authority, what we have said is that we have our failings, but society should not excuse our failings. We are set up to deliver a service. The country should demand it till that service is delivered. Because once again, without standards, everything will fall apart.
Now, when you say without standards and standards is life, it suggests to my limited understanding that standards therefore will affect a number of different things from so the clothes we wear. I'm worried though that, so is there a standard for kinky? Because I like kinky. We've seen the price of kinky evolve over time. So price of petrol goes up sooner or later, price of maize will go up, so it means price of kinky goes up. Is there standards that guide how we do this? Because if I walked into a supermarket and I wanted to buy beef patties to make burgers and I wanted a quarter pounder, I'm almost certain that based on the brand I'm buying, I could put it on a scale and get a quarter pounder no matter where I bought it in the world. Is that the same for kinky? Should there be standards that govern kinky?
Should I give you the bad news first and the good news?
I want the bad news second.
Okay, we do not have standards for kinky yet.
Okay.
But we will have them once there's industry demand. I can tell you that the Standards Authority has just published the standards for Sobolo. And
standards for Sobolo?
Yeah, we have standards for Sobolo.
Wow.
Because people are consuming it, industry is wanting it. And what I have done, definitely the Standards Authority have done historically, and what we are doing increasingly is that standards are driven by industry. The requirements of the country helps us to do standards.
Okay.
As I speak with you, we have, that is the Ghana Standards Authority, we have standards in 27 different areas.
Okay.
And for the sake of our listeners, let me sort of explain in very simple layman's term what a standard is. A standard is a written down or a documented procedure that doesn't have to be written by hand. It could be electronic. A procedure for what a process, a product, or a service looks like. What are the features? What is the color? So if you say the standard for kinky, you can say this is the standard for kinky. Kinky is made of maize, but what should be the maize content? What should be the water content? If we say kinky size 1, what should it be? Now we've done it for maize, we've done it for okra. So even maize, if you are buying maize on the Ghana Commodity Exchange, we have graded them. We have graded rice, we have them for yams and tubers. Indeed, the Standards Authority has standards in 27 different areas in this country, from alcoholic beverages where we have 14, animal and vegetable fats, building and construction, clothing, documentation. We have standards for documentation.
Please pause and explain what standards for documentation exactly would be about.
Few people realize that we have so many things you have to document. How do you keep records? Indeed, yesterday, His Excellency the President was in Takoradi speaking about the fact that the mere allegation of corruption should not lead to corruption. I would say that the Standards Authority in 2019 has published a Ghana standards for anti-bribery systems, basically to define what corruption is. Because, using words is easy. Defining them is another thing. And that was done with eminent Ghanaians across board. So those are the sort of things we do. Instead, we have standards for writing aids, pen and paper, for cereal and cereal products, for paper and paper products. People don't realize that even toilet roll should not have bacteria in it, or else when you use it for the services for which you use it, you will end up with complications which you don't want. We have standards for processed roots and tubers for petroleum and petroleum products, of which we have 182. Oil and gas, cosmetics, plastics, rubber, jewelry, mining, packaging, timber. We have standards. I keep saying we have 2,000 plus standards, and they are all available for purchase or for use. The problem had been that we never told the country about it, and when the country doesn't know, then there's a problem. Currently, we have 2,882 standards across all sphere.
2,882 standards.
Covers things including street lights, covers the brightness or otherwise of street lights, covers advertising boards, the standards they should have so that they don't fall down and kill people.
Wow.
Inshira, we have standards for almost everything. For how you keep people. If you are building your house, we have standards for the way the kitchen should look. How to prevent fire, we have it. Fire retardant. For tiles, so that you don't slip and fall in the kitchen. for bathrooms, for bulbs, for cables. I mean, need I go on?
Now, I mean, it's quite interesting that it's very comprehensive what standards cover. Of course, it now gives even further credence to the statement that standards is life, that we cannot develop without a strong foundation based on standards and quality processes. A lot of the time there's been talk about, okay, this country, we are corrupt, everything is upside down, we've put the cart before the horse, and so things aren't ever going to work. If we have 2,882 standards and more coming, where do you think the dysfunction is coming from? Is it a lack of understanding of or is it that we don't know about these? What do you think accounts for where we are?
I mean, there are several, and I would not claim to have all the answers. But from where I see it, what I see is that traditionally, till we started singing this very loud song of Ghana Beyond Aid, which is very important, we as a country have delighted in the form of things rather than going into the substance. We like how people look rather than what they give. What definitely I did have brought to the Standards Authority is that there's no point in developing standards if you're not going to help in enforcing them. It's a waste of time. It's an absolute waste of time. And it's a tragedy for generations to come. Because let's face it, we are there for a reason, to establish standards and to ensure that these standards are enforced. The law is clear. Yes, we are hopelessly underfunded and really struggling. But for me, that is not the issue. The issue is that there's a job to be done for God and country. That job will be done because that job is what will create the jobs. I don't see how this country is going to create the tens of thousands of jobs we need. And we can create these jobs quickly just by adhering to standards. Instead, if we're all just adhering to the standards on making sure that all the signboards on the streets conform to Ghanaian standards, trust me, there'll be enough people enforcing that jobs will be created. And you know what that will lead to? That will make sure that nobody can just get up and put a signboard there. They will now have to either go to the technical university or to the real university or to a high school. Now you are going to create more and more people beginning to make sure that the ruler is correct and the scale is correct, because it's a mindset, and we have to change. In fact, we don't have a choice about changing the mindset. The options are that then we have young men and women not even be able to get a place to do national service. Then you have young men and women looking for places for internships which are not available. And yet this country is in great need of services. And the moment you make sure that those services are offered in a consistent manner, in a high quality manner, based on standards, everybody will be free. Israel, we are sitting in a country called Ghana where standards across so many areas, including journalism. Ouch. I mean, I was going to say, I met the GIGJ president, and we had a laugh, and I'm saying I'm going to come and see him. Why? Because I believe that it's about time both the media and ourselves, the so-called technocrats, we are held to the same standard.
Yeah.
Because if we don't deliver, we must be held liable or moved up for others to deliver. But then it goes across board. So the reason why things have been worked, that has been my hypothesis, is that we the enforcers don't want to be stressed by society, so we don't enforce much, because when you start looking into the soup of everybody in Ghana, they will look into your soup. And for instance, if I go clamping down on cable manufacturers, if I clamp down on the media that your standards are poor because Joy FM, your signboard, for instance, I'm not saying it's bad, for instance, if your signboard is not good, the next thing you will, and legitimately so, make sure that my building is okay, that my staircases are standardized. You have to, because
But it's good that we check each other.
He who goes to equity must come with clean hands. And I am willing to say on national radio that across board, we have all made excuses for one another, so we have not enforced, and that has been detrimental to the progress of this nation, this great nation called Ghana. And my prayer is that with the support and the leadership of our president, we would all just say enough is enough. Let's rearrange the minds and let's hold each other accountable to the standards we say. Inshallah, we need to ask state agencies, regardless of the name, that if you say your service level is at 2 weeks, it should be 2 weeks. There should be no drama. We should stop making excuses that, the street lights went off. Come on, you've paid for it. If it's not on, it's not on. For me, little things lead to big things. And I keep saying that anytime I see Okada going against traffic, if we are not fixing all these things, I'm sorry, then Kolebu will still keep on making medical errors, because what do you expect?
They'll be overwhelmed.
Thank you. And when they're overwhelmed, they have to
course,
treat
you make
10
mistakes.
broken limbs and my blood pressure. They make a mistake because they are humans. So, it is all or none. And that is why the great St. Monicans will say each for all and all for God. We are in a country which can be rich and which can be prosperous. But to do that,
Kakra to get there.
Kakra to get there. I mean, if you go to Scandinavia, the rules are clean. You don't litter. If you litter, the assembly is going to spend so much money cleaning up the rubbish that there's no money to fix the potholes. And then you complain about potholes. You know the question I keep asking, what do Ghanaians want? Seriously, what do we want? Because dishonesty is key to our way of doing business. I mean, try anything and make it stable. Everybody will come and see, Alex Charlie, so, I mean, when are we going to learn to speak the truth and march on and bring progress?
It's 45 minutes past 1. This is the Executive Lounge. My guest is the Director General of the Ghana Standards Authority, Professor Alex Ni Otudodu. And he is clearly a very passionate man and knowledgeable in his field. And we're exploring why standards are important for society, why standards are important for our own development. Now, a comment just come through. Kobna says the 5 kilogram bags of rice on shelves are less than 5 kilograms. I measured 4.5 on different occasions. Is it the sack and its content, or is the skill? Could it be? How do we get around to holding people accountable? So if I bought something from the shop and there's a weight, and I believe there's a legal document.
There's a Weight and Measures Act, NRCD 326 of 1975.
Okay. Oh wow, 75. So we've been heading in the right direction for quite a while.
We've had the law.
Okay.
It's there.
So if I bought something that's labeled 5 kilograms but weigh it and I find that it is 4.5, the question is, where is the difference? Is it in the fact that maybe my scale is not reading? How do we know what to measure? Even the scale, is it calibrated? What's the process? Enlighten me.
So, Inshira, the Weight and Measures Act is very clear. I think I quoted the Bible saying the 40 standards, but the Bible said the 40 weights. Because in the Bible, in the good old days, and even in the Quran, I mean, in all religions, cheating was rife, and the good Lord has always hated it. So in 1975, the Weight and Measures Act was clear.
Yeah.
Before you use any weighing or measuring instruments, it should be calibrated. And to the layman, it's just like you want to set it to 0, so that when you stand on it and it gets to 1, you know it started from 0 to 1, and it didn't start from 1 and then it's 2.
Okay.
And it's supposed to be done, and then a certificate issued by the Ghana Standards Authority. Now, before the Ghana Standards Authority will do that, it is supposed to have what we call a primary standard. That one, the law says that we look at it and take it to France and compare it to the international standard, and then get a certificate and bring it here and lock it in a room. So that when we say 1 kilogram in Ghana, it is the same as 1 kilogram in France and America. As to how well we've done that one is a different matter. But Inshira, the problem we have, and what your listener has said, or the one who wrote to you, is true. We have done assessment of prepackaged products on the market. And the weight variation is unacceptable. It's seriously unacceptable. For some companies and industries, I don't want to mention names because I'm not endorsing any, it's been consistent. But for several, it's been severely, severely, and worryingly inconsistent, usually low. I know the public has been complaining about petrol stations. Well, wait till you see the weight of other things you buy. It will shock you. And I think there are cases in court which I cannot make mention of relating to how producers have been cheated of weight and measures.
How rife is this on the delivery
it is
of
very rife.
standards?
It is very rife in terms of weight and measures. It's very rife. It has become a way of doing business. It's very rife in a country full of Christians and Muslims. It's very rife, and it is worrying. So, Ishira, when someone sells you a 5 kilogram bag of rice, which is 4.5 kilogram, you have been cheated almost, is it 10% of it or so, thereabout?
That's about 10%.
Just a little over 10%.
Yeah.
Now, 10% of the cheating means that the person has not paid taxes to Honorable Ken Oforiatta.
On the extra, someone
has cheated the country of VAT, of taxes, of so many other monies but someone has cheated a poor farmer, a poor mother, single father, poor Alex Dodu, poor Nshira, of 10% of his budget. That is unacceptable.
Wow. Question coming in from Cape Coast is from Abusa Jackson Gilanyo. He says, how do you check gas stations, filling stations? Because he thinks they're killing the citizens too much.
I think it's not been too long when we've had issues of cracking down, naming and shaming fuel stations which have been under delivering.
Yeah.
I would say that since then, the Association of Oil Marketing Companies have engaged the Standards Authority very, very aggressively in terms of how do we ensure that those who are doing the right things are protected. We had our last meeting last week, Friday. Hopefully within the next week or so, most likely within the next 2 weeks, we will come up with modalities, and those who are committed and have signed up to be of good behavior will be known. And they have pledged to support the naming and shaming once the processes are all agreed. So you'll be hearing more on this space, and then indeed we intend really to quarterly, at least every quarter, publish to the country the states of our fuel stations. It's important Ghanaians know what is going on. Transparency is what drives progress.
So okay, so you are DG of GSA. Without putting you on the spot and asking about the future, how can we, I mean, the problems you came to see in the carrying out of your duties and mandate predates your arrival. So if I would go according to Einstein's thinking, if we are doing what we were doing yesterday, we can't expect to have a different result tomorrow, which requires innovation. What three things do you think, if we did differently, not just from the GSA perspective, but also from citizens' perspective, if we did differently, we'll be able to turn the situation around?
My first is going to be what I said from the beginning, mindset. Ensure the mindset which accepts mediocrity and makes excuses for the lack of delivery by anybody, including the GSA, should be cast aside and thrown away. Ensure progress only comes when progress is expected. And I believe that over the years, the Fama Nyame and Yeshui syndrome has brought us back rather than sent us forward. I believe that a citizen pays for a service. That service must be delivered as expected because you are paying for it. That would promote efficiency. That will make sure that our industries move up to speed. That will make this country a rich country. So for me, that is number one.
Okay.
That is the mindset. Number two, the way of doing business. The way of doing business is that Ghanaians should expect quality as default and not faultiness as default. Quality must be the default. And why do I say the way of doing business? For instance, the Standards Authority will be in establishing standards. What I notice is that to what extent are Ghanaians engaged in the establishment of standards? So within the next week or so, you will see adverts calling for all Ghanaians who have interests in all the areas we work in to send their CVs. Because even if you are not a member of the committee, you should have an input. That is what is done everywhere else. And this is what we call walking the talk. Because, you can have a consultative process in this country which is heavily not consultative. Deliberately so. I mean, you call a meeting at 4 o'clock knowing that people are busy, and 5 o'clock you said you invited AGI and Petroleum, and they didn't come or they came late, and then you say you pack a decision. But you did not consult them.
Wow.
And then last but not the least, you said three things. Last but not the least is enforcement. I believe that we must enforce, however painful it is. So, change of mindset, change of the way we do business, but ensuring that enforcement of our laws, enforcement of our standards, enforcement of our specifications, enforcement of everything that must be enforced. Once that is done, we'll move forward.
On the question of enforcement, today at the Joy Business Financial Services Sector Forum, I think it was Dr. Sedo said something about, the number of licensed deposit taking agencies and in the financial services sector is so huge that we will have trouble supervising and enforcing and keeping everyone in tow. Likewise, the number of things that, at a current count of 2,882 standards, I'm sure there's more. This is probably just the tip of the iceberg.
Right.
How how do we enforce all of these if we don't have feet on the ground?
So it comes to resources, and once again, if we are changing the mindset from our bosses, the executive, to parliament, and to the judiciary, we must put resources. Ensure if you look at the Ghana Standards Authority, we have just about 250 full-time staff with several and contract staff. If you don't put resources, quality is not cheap. They beat about the banks. Why license them if you're not going to regulate them? These days I'm learning to use very simple words so that I don't run into trouble. But the
last time you got into trouble, you were sat exactly.
So I'm trying to choose my words very carefully. But to license companies where you know that you do not have the ability to follow them up and to regulate them is a disservice to the Ghanaian consumer. Because when they pay their taxes, they expect that you will fix a charge which will be commensurate to the service you deliver, so that those you register, you regulate. I always tell my people that when we put the GSA mark on the product, the consumer is at liberty to sue us because we are giving third-party guarantee that this meets a particular standard. Oh yes, and I welcome suing because we cannot joke with the trust of Ghanaians. Our mark is there only to tell you that we have checked it and we say it's fit to use. So if it's not fit to use, you have been cheated. Because you are paying your taxes to ensure that Alex Odo has a car to sit in and that salary. So anything less than me delivering what you have paid for, you have been cheated.
Wow.
And we accept it. That is my worry.
Okay. Let's so the Ike in the USA says, how do you check the standards of smashed Olunka for the sale of Gary?
Okay, so when we are selling Gary, we demand that you use a weighing scale, which in fact in Ghana, the law is clear. We are using grams, not even what's the previous one, pounds. And that was why we had the Weight and Measures Act in 75 to move us to the System International, to the international system of measurement, so that we can trade with the world.
Final question is from King Wager. He says, is there standards for water? Ghana Water Company pumps into our homes?
I think this person is a visionary. He's seen something which we have just discussed. I think that was Friday with the Ghana Water Company Limited.
Oh, wow.
As I speak, the Electricity Company of Ghana has engaged the GSA. We have more or less finalized. We have a date for the final meeting by which all prepaid meters should be calibrated, just to ensure that consumers are protected. And the Ghana Water Company Limited, the CEO himself came to our offices to ask that should be done to protect consumers. And we intend to engage the Public Utilities Regulatory Commission on that as well. So I would say definitely for ECG and for the Ghana Water Company Limited, the leadership have approved this, and for ECG we have literally completed the document and we are just waiting for final approval from both our management, and then we can hit the ground.
This is one conversation I think we have to redo, do a part two, not redo, but because we're not going to exhaust all of it. Chris from Tema PDS says, great program, good afternoon to you all. I love the topic standardization. One area that always disturbs me is the seats in our trotros. You don't enjoy comfort when you have long legs like mine. I think this area should be looked at. Quite interesting question. Are there standards that govern how our Troskis and taxis should be, public transport should be run?
I think your listeners are extremely discerning. Why do I say so? I'm sure you are aware that the government has passed, His Excellency Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo has passed the auto policy.
Okay.
Now, when the auto policy was passed, one of the key things Honorable and Chairman insisted we do is to have standards. So we have published it for public consultation. It's been completed. Now we're just waiting for gazetting. Okay. So I don't know how long it takes for publishing. But yes, we have standards. It even touches things. A lot of vehicles we are using for trotro will not meet the standards. Okay. I will say that up front. But it has things for the standards, for the headlights, for the lamps, etc., etc. So yes, Ghana does have a draft standards. I'm happy to share it. It's even on our website for vehicles, the seat belts, the trotro seats, and the like.
Okay. Well, all too soon we've come to the end, unfortunately. So someone's asking, this is a really good question, if I could get your answer in 2 seconds. Says, is there a way to measure services rendered by service providers? This is someone in DC.
The answer is yes, but we are not doing it. We're not doing it enough.
Okay. It means that there's a lot more that we need to do. And... okay, so we're so out of time.
Everything is going to be all right.
Everything is going to be all right. We'll find a way to get around it. The news is up in a moment, but thank you very much, Professor Alex Dodu, for making time to join us. But for me, normally I leave 5 things I'm taking away from this conversation. Today, I think it all comes down to one thing, and it's imaginations I'm having. Think of running a lab test at a hospital and being diagnosed with something other than what you have, and that leads to being prescribed a treatment that is something other than what you should have. It's a very scary thought to have. The bottom line here is that standards must be adhered to. It must be enforced. In the absence of these 2 key interventions around standardization, we will be losing men and women, children who will grow up to impact this world in great ways. And so, as you go out there to buy things and spend your hard-earned money, demand quality. Just because it's local doesn't mean it should be inferior. Demand quality wherever you go. Again, thank you for tuning in. We're back next week with more. And this standards conversation is only just beginning. I think Prof has just really triggered something in me. And you can be assured that this is not the last time we do this. So God bless you all. Prof Dodu, thank you so much for coming in.
You're welcome.
And we sure will do this again. It's time for us to bring you the news at 2. Hannah Odami is in the studio. And Hannah, I hope you're well.
Very well, Insura. Coming up, enjoy headline news at 2. Opposition